Hi, everyone. We just had a little private conversation because Clara's taken off her glasses to, to calm her nerves for this conversation. But don't worry, it's going to be very relaxed. It's going to be very conversational. And we're all here to have a good time and learn a lot about NFT art communities. So by way of introduction, my name is Marissa Trew. I am the senior content lead at Blokhaus Inc., which is a Web3 and marketing agency. And I am joined by a panel of three very influential figures within the art space. And we've all been brought together to discuss the topic of come together, building communities in the NFT art space. So by way of introduction, we first have Clara. You are a curator and the founder of NFT Asia, an open and inclusive community centered on uplifting Asian and Asia-based artists and creatives all around the world. We also have Tulika Ahuja, curator of the Tezos exhibition right here at C-Focus and the founder of Mama Magnet, an independent consultancy for cultural strategy, collaborative and curatorial intervention. And then last but not least, Bjorn Calleja. Got the name? Perfect. Okay, great. A contemporary painter, interdisciplinary artist, and founder of Design Other Things, a design studio that worked with a team of visual artists. So firstly, thank you all for taking part today, especially on a very hot Sunday afternoon. And I want to start the discussion with a very top-line question, which is simply, what does community actually mean to you in the art space? So Clara, why don't we begin with you?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us and for inviting me. What does community mean in the art space? I guess community means a lot of different things, but specifically for NFT Asia, it means to create a safe and conducive environment for artists to grow and explore their individual journeys within like blockchain environments together. So we started NFT Asia in March 2021, really because we felt there was a lack of spaces that centered Asian artists within discourse around NFTs, crypto art. And there were a lot of questions, a lot of curiosities, but there was no one space really focusing on artists being able to get those answers, or artists being to just exchange notes or learn how to navigate together. So it's things from like, I'm an artist in Singapore, or I'm an artist from Malaysia. How do I get onto one of these platforms? What's the best exchange, or what's the best pathway onto these platforms? Down to like, how do I write my artist bio? Keeping in mind that a lot of artists in the NFT space don't necessarily come from traditional art environments or have had access to support, to navigate these kind of milestones, I guess. So we wanted to just open up a platform, that being our Discord server, where we would moderate and create the space for conversation and mutual sharing. So for us, community initially took space with this format. Yeah.
So despite it being a very young community, just over or just under a year old, you've essentially brought together very like-minded individuals who are all sharing knowledge and expertise within a field that is very new to a lot of people and new to a lot of independent artists as well as institutional players as well. And then Bjorn, as an artist, what does community mean to you?
From where I come from, I come from. First, I'd like to thank everyone for having me. I came from the Philippines, from Manila, so I also come from a traditional art background. So for me, the sense of community is special, mostly with the artists, fellow artists. We're able to help push each other, push each other to grow and to cultivate our practices. We learn from each other. We're able to share our experiences and support community as like building a family that's watching you grow from the beginning until you can make it stand on your own legs. So I think basically that's my idea of community. we believe in the same things, so we support each other.
Excellent. So it's sort of knowledge sharing through what Clara was saying, and then creative reinforcement and support from what you were saying. And Tulika, what about in your field of work, especially with Mama Magnet? What does community look like?
Community is a group of like-minded individuals, and these could be the artists themselves. It could be their fans, their collectors. It could also be clients. So community also, to me, it should sort of be a safe space, but it comes with its own challenges. Like a community should challenge you, a community should protect you, a community should also help you grow and nurture you. And I think my role sometimes it is to facilitate all of these roles, to make sure that the community is good for each other, and it's a safe space for like people to operate. A lot of the times, communities, they stay in touch online, Instagram, Twitter, all of these platforms, but going for exhibitions, going for meetups, all of these help communities to get to know each other a little bit better, and also feel supported, you know, like it's, you can't deny the value of that face time.
So there's a lot of cultivating that sense of belonging as well, and like you said, creating a safe environment for people to actually begin challenging themselves and challenging each other to either expand or just, you know, help their work evolve. But then, as you were saying, there is a difference between the IRL communities that we interact with and then the digital spaces that we work with. And Bjorn, you were also adding that, you know, based in Manila, there's a community of artists there that are very much near and dear to you, physically speaking. But then you're also interacting with art communities online. So when we take this conversation into the blockchain universe, what makes an NFT art community unique? Clara?
Sure. I guess from NFT Asia's point of view, it's that we don't really have a physical loci or a specific place where we're based. A lot of our core team members happen to be in Singapore or Southeast Asia just because that's where we initially started. But it's this idea that, you know, we are digitally focused, and that a lot of our activities or interactions are based online, whether it's hanging out on Discord together, it's running Twitter features and open calls, and really thinking about our online channels as being some of our most important points of outreach. With 2022, we did start doing more IRL events, but a lot of that still started because of online conversations or are facilitated through open calls that we run on our social media channels. I think it comes, for us, it very much comes from this recognition that the ideal is that blockchain would be decentralized and borderless, even though we very much recognize that it is not. Access is not borderless. But the hope is that through our digital efforts that we can support more artists throughout the Asian continent, or anyone that identifies with being Asian, regardless of where they are physically based. I think a big impetus for why we started was also because we saw that a lot of the communities or collectors, earlier players that were very vocal, were based in certain parts of the world, namely the US and Europe, and a lot of exhibition efforts or meetups also focused on those areas. And those artists were also some of the first that received direct recognition, you know, that made bigger sales, and it's hard to deny those networking efforts. But as we can see, like there's a lot of effort trying to historicize art on the blockchain, or trying to create certain canons and narratives within the space. And we wanted to make sure that Asian artists wouldn't be left out of it just because they don't have the same access, or, you know, it's not so feasible for someone in Indonesia to be flying down to New York all the time to attend a certain meetup. So why not focus on growing spaces local to us and bring those communities here together? I think another thing we think about is utilizing that power we have as a collective recognizing that with the like 4,000 artists in our Discord and then a separate following on Twitter, NFT Asia as a whole has a different kind of platform than that individual artist like might have online. So, okay, we have this visibility. How can we then use that to make it possible for individual artists, whether it's to have their work amplified, to have their work reach someone else? So I think because of like these different concerns or the different ways that we see artists in the community want to grow, we try our best to respond to those concerns and like allow the artists and community to decide like, oh, like this is what we care about. This is what we hope NFT Asia can do together. That it's very malleable, and a big part of that is because so much is just online. It's open conversations, and yeah. I guess that's a really long response to say. Yeah.
So to stay with you for a moment, building a community like NFT Asia very much has an underlying motivation to put Asia-based artists and Asian artists on the map, because as you were saying, there are a lot of barriers to entry worldwide that might make it more challenging for an Asia-based artist to break into the global mainstream, as it were, which is arguably Western dominated. But then at the same time, when we speak of a community like NFT Asia, Asia itself is so diverse. So how do you create a kind of synergy across the people who join that community and help them feel like they are a part of a greater whole when they are surrounded by people who are very different from one another?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. Also recognizing one of our key limitations within the team right now, whether it's like the key moderators or the project managers, most of us either are communicating in English or that's still the main channel on our Discord. But we also have lots of members from places where they're not native speakers or they don't feel as comfortable. Like last June, we had a huge influx of, 2021 June, we had a huge influx of Thai artists coming into the Discord. And there were so many talented artists, and we were just completely wowed by like what they were doing. But they were talking about how they didn't feel able to participate in as many of the Twitter conversations, or Clubhouse rooms were still a thing at the time, or really just being more vocal, as a lot more of the, say, US-based artists were. So we started hosting this thing in Discord called Pitch Practice, where it's really like creating that safe space. And we're not claiming to be experts, but we're just listeners. So if an artist wants to come on, introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their practice, get used to speaking about themselves in this particular setting, and we're just there as listeners to help, say, oh, okay, so this is what I'm hearing, or I thought that part of your story was really interesting. Do you want to, tell me a little bit more? But also to help sort of artists build that confidence and reassure them that, hey, I think, everyone here understands that maybe you're not a native English speaker, but that's not a problem because, your work speaks for itself, or it's our fault that like the space isn't more diverse and that we're not able to actually, serve more people. It's not your problem. So I guess just trying to be sensitive to how that difference in access across so many different levels and dimensions can look like, and ask the community to facilitate as much support as we can, even though, of course, there's still a lot of limitations to what we do.
And exactly, this goes back to the point of NFT Asia acting as a knowledge-sharing platform and precisely being able to provide the skills or the practice arenas for artists to be able to actively promote their work. But Bjorn, your art has obviously been exhibited globally, but what did the beginning look like to you in terms of when you initially started to put yourself out there as an artist, specifically within the NFT space? How did you pitch yourself, or how did you build the traction and the community around the people who were passionate about your work?
I started out really not knowing anybody in the space, so I think just having the courage to start working in a very alienating world, and then being accepted as one of theirs is I mean, I had a community built around what I do in the NFT space. So, and I think it helped a lot that I was able to put my work out there and reach out to as many people like NFT Asia. I've been part of one of their shows, and TZ APAC. It opened up a lot of opportunities for just exhibiting and showing the world what I can do. I think it's been a really there's a good balance between the communities that I built in the Web3 space and the communities that I have in IRL, and even in Manila I have met a lot of new artists who are not into the fine art scene and are doing NFTs, and we're trying to push the what we can have for the NFT, um, for the technology, for how we can exhibit the works, how we can um, promote the artists that aren't doing the traditional art practice.
So as you were mentioning before, there is your, I guess, your non-NFT art community, your traditional art. I put traditional in quotes because I don't think anyone really considers themselves a traditional artist. It almost sounds like a dirty word these days.
It got me confused because ever since I jumped into the NFTs, there's always this
This
deep
line
divide,
drawn,
yeah,
yeah.
that's been drawn. But for me, it's just the same practice.
So the practice is the same, but do the people you interact with
Are
differ?
very different. Yeah.
Right.
And there's a much more global audience for the Web3 art practice. Unlike for painting, for exhibitions, I do mostly shows in Manila, so mostly the Philippines are aware of what I do. But with Web3, I think it expanded the reach of my audience for my art, the community that I built. So, yeah.
So it's just a much more international community, I guess, when it comes to the blockchain space in particular, just because it is inherently global. But to go back to Clara's point, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone has equal access to it. So it is not a perfect system, but there does exist the opportunity to really interact with almost everyone who's got a connection online. And Tulika, you and I were discussing earlier that your first foray into the space was more on the community channels. You were interacting on Discord and Twitter and learning about the movement in a way that allowed you to kind of see it from afar without directly interacting at first. So can you talk me through when you first came across the space, what were your first impressions, and then how did you build up your involvement in those arenas?
I think one of the main differences between like traditional art communities and NFT communities is that NFT artists are digitally native. So a lot of the conversations they're all recorded, they're all online, and you can hop on any time of the day and you'd be able to see what went down on that channel. And I think this is mainly what sets it apart from traditional art communities where everything happens in real time. And it's a lot harder to track because they're not so digitally savvy. They're not doing live streams. They're not even using Discord. And I mean, I don't know if it's true for you, but a lot of the artists that are now making NFTs, they entered the space because people kept telling them, hey, you should make NFTs, you should make NFTs. And then they started making NFTs. But there's a whole chunk of artists who are still very intimidated by the space. So yeah, that was sort of like, that was how I entered the space. I was like, okay, cool, like let's check it out. A lot of the artists are being told like, let's make NFTs, so let's check it out. First impressions, the sense of community is really strong. Like there's low barriers to entry, and artists are able to, Discord channels, for those of you who don't know, they're very they're very organized. So they divide it into different categories. And for example, there'll be a separate channel where you can share your sketches. And then there will be other people commenting or like helping you improve or like helping you build confidence. So that was what was really nice about the space. Memes were like another really nice catch of the space. Each Discord community would have their own types and styles of memes that they would share, and this was an icebreaker for like anyone. So when I first entered the space, I was always just like on the memes, and then they have like weekly meetups and things like that. So yeah, that was how I sort of.
So then talk me through from, these early interactions and conversing through memes and taking part in the sense of humor of a collective group to where you are now in terms of having Mama Magnet curate the Sea Focus exhibition for the, Tezos' exhibition downstairs by TZAPAC. What went into the thought process of, the artists that you wanted to curate, and why did you select them? What was the common thread that bound all of them?
So the exhibition downstairs, it's a representation of how different artists in Southeast Asia, how they're using the technology of NFTs, how they are bringing different mediums, and how they're sort of like challenging what you traditionally think of what an NFT artist should be. So we have artists represented from 4 countries, Bjorn from the Philippines, Reza Hasni from Singapore, we have from Malaysia, Arkibal and Chawan. And from Indonesia, we have a duo, an audiovisual duo, Ika and Disco Kid. So I'll tell you like an interesting story of how the Malaysia NFT community is really strong. They have these like national platforms like Malaysia, like NFT.my, where you can go in and see all the artists in Malaysia who are making NFTs. And let's say for someone in the West who's looking to Asia, like communities like this are really good because immediately you can see that you can go really deep into the community. So for the Malaysian artists that we're showing downstairs, Arkibal was actually really prominent in the NFT space from 2018, but he passed away in last year, March 2022. But his NFTs still live on. So we thought it would be really interesting to bring this idea of legacy into our show that's about living system. But how do we reach out to him, right? So I contacted some artists who I had worked with before in Malaysia. His name is Liz, and I was like, hey, we're thinking of doing this show. Is there any way we can contact Arkibal's estate, or can we get permission from anyone who's in charge of his estate? And then he was like, okay, these were some people that Arkibal was collaborating with while he was still alive, so why don't you try asking this person and this person? So that's how I got connected to Chawan. And Chawan was actually the person who was helping Arkibal's wife archive the works and, get access to his iPad and things like that after Arkibal passed away. So Chawan went to Arkibal's wife to ask for permission, and then he ended up making this piece for the show. It's a landscape piece. Arkibal's last tweet was, don't give up, and then it was a sketch of one of his characters. He makes these character universes that are living their lives in these parallel worlds. So Chawan continued that narrative landscape, and now it's this character universe of both their characters.
So I think it's almost a direct example of how the network effect and community effect can really bring art forward. Art that was potentially going to be lost, upon the passing of the artists themselves. But then to talk about the discovery process for artists, I think what is evidenced by this conversation is that as curators, interacting within these communities is what allows you to discover some of the talents that are putting themselves out there, or basically allowing you to to explore the artists that have joined the communities, evaluate their work, and then perhaps involve them in one of your future exhibitions or galleries. Talk to me about the discovery process. Like, how much does community consensus of an artist matter when you are trying to spot talent? Clara?
Yeah, I think that's a really tricky aspect of it, actually, because with Web3, with NFTs, some of the earliest ethos or narrative was, away with the gatekeepers and away with the curators, away with the older traditional ways of approaching art or trying to segment different parts of the art ecosystem. And so, curation or curators came with this bad rep of being snobby or really, just creating barriers for the space. And so there was a lot of call for decentralized curation or community-based curation, which essentially is allowing the entire community to decide together what to show or like what to support and what, to put aside. But the issue with that is it often becomes like a popularity contest. And so much of NFTs is run on Twitter and Discord. It can also then come to who's a better marketeer or who's better at working social media algorithms. Not to say that their work isn't great by itself, but being able to work Twitter definitely plays into then like, oh, this is, you go on, you see an artist profile, you're like, oh, they have 200,000, whatever, followers, and you're like, they must be a great artist. So I think that definitely played into like how the art discourse around NFTs start taking shape, which became problematic very quickly. So I think with NFT Asia, for example, when we work on an open call and we're trying to select artists, we're trying to think about, okay, what's the suitable context? Or we keep track internally of the artists that we've worked with and artists that are new to us. And we try our best to ensure that with everything we work on, we're at least focusing at least half, if not more, of that selection on artists that are new to us. We try to focus on artists that maybe don't yet have a very significant following and that can really benefit from this particular spotlight or feature, but also, recognizing that if it's a really great work, we just want to support this work. So I think it's a very delicate balance. And the tricky thing, I think, with running a community in Web3 that I've learned over the past nearly 2 years now is that feedback is instantaneous, and you get a lot of feedback, whether it's on Twitter or Discord, and you can never really please everyone. I think we've been, trying to remind ourselves that we're moderators, we're facilitators, like Tulika said, but it's hard to ensure that you can meet thousands of people's best interests at the same time, especially when so much of our own team, besides myself, everyone on the team is an artist themselves. And so we're trying our best to navigate the space together. But you'll never have the best curation, the best, selection that everyone is pleased with and agrees with, especially when so many of our own members are artists that also hope to be spotlighted. So I think it's just balancing between a lot of different interests from a lot of different kinds of positions, but recognizing that we still have this platform and what we do can come with certain weight, and bearing that responsibility in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think you touched on a few key points there. One being that there is a prevailing narrative within the blockchain and crypto space of the death of the middleman and the removal of every player that stands between the artist and the eventual buyer, which is to dilute a lot of the importance of the expertise that curators bring to the table, or whether they're gallerists, museums, exhibitors, whoever they are. There is value in the perspectives that they bring to this space, and so the removal of the middleman is almost a toxic narrative when it comes to the art realm, and it poses a lot of challenges. And then again, the other point that you touched upon that I think is really critical is to not confuse the size of the community or following of an artist with the inherent quality of their work. There is a lot of shilling in the crypto space that can often confuse the people who venture into it especially those who perhaps, are making their own judgments of how they feel about art and just can't understand how the hype translates to, a PFP. And for those of you who are not as immersed within the blockchain space, PFP are essentially the profile picture NFTs. So you're thinking about CryptoPunks, Bored Apes, and the size of the communities around that are what really drive the value of those NFTs. But arguably the value of those is more inherent in the community than the PFP or the visual image itself. And so it confuses the conversation about, there's the art community, the PFP community, the classic crypto bro community, and whose voice really matters at the table. And so, Bjorn, I want to bring this to you. These are, all the voices that I'm sure you're interacting with. And how do you position yourself where you feel the confidence of, the praise that you receive online, but also making sure that you're still kind of getting the opinions about your work that matter, the critical opinions that are going to help shape the rooms that you get to exhibit at or promote your work within?
I try to silence the noise. Because jumping into the crypto space, it requires a lot of being present in social media, communicating to collectors, and to connecting to other artists. It takes a lot of time away from studio work for me. So I think in the beginning I had a lot of time because we were in the midst of the lockdown. But eventually now that things are slowly opening up, my schedule is getting pretty booked, and I haven't been really into Twitter a lot of times. So I think it's important to not listen to the noise that aren't really important and focus on the work, focus on experiencing life and translating it so you can bring life back to the crypto world. That's how I see with the work that I do. Because I can't really make work about being a human being without being a human being first. So I think that's it.
But at the same time, you mentioned before that you did create a collection that was specifically targeted towards a satirical take of PFPs, because obviously, as much as you might try to silence the noise, you will always interact with it to a degree. So can you tell us about what this PFP project was and why you chose to put a satirical take on it?
Because I jumped into the NFT space and without really knowing anything about it, and that was the time when the Bored Apes were about to launch. So I was thinking, why are people going crazy over these profile pictures? So I decided to make my own satire collection. I named it Stupid Avatar Projects, or people call it Stupid. So once you buy into the project, you get the chance to be stupid yourselves and act stupidly on Twitter, and nobody's gonna judge you.
So it was just this opportunity to have fun with the space, and the fact that everyone was taking it very, very seriously, trying to flip NFTs for a lot of money when you were coming in and saying, this is just supposed to be fun, right?
Yes, yes. And and it's not about the money. It's about being. It turned out to be a community in the end. People who bought into the project asked me to make a Discord, and if you go inside the Discord during the beginning, it was all just yeses because I used to market the PFP by commenting yes on every Twitter, on every tweet that I can. If there's a question tweet, I'd comment with yes. And then everybody bought in, and the Discord is just filled with yes. But now,
So you almost became an accidental community leader of a PFP troop,
yeah,
which started as a joke. But then again, I think what a lot of people mistake about the blockchain space is that people are taking it very, very seriously, and this is all about the commercial opportunity and generating income and flipping, artwork for a lot of value. But what people tend to forget is that a lot of this space is very, very young, and there is this thread of humor. People are not taking it too seriously. The people are genuinely joking around and having a really fun time at the same time as they are promoting one another's work and, buying and selling artwork that they truly do think is interesting and valuable. So, Tulika, again, how has this impacted the way, Mama Magnet is positioning itself within this space? And because you were saying earlier that you were taking part in the humor aspect of it and trying to get a bit more connected to the people who, are perhaps more prominent voices. So how have you built your profile within that arena, and how are you taking those relationships forward?
Specifically with the NFT space, so Mama Magnet operates across multimedia installations. We work with digital art, we work with light installations, we work with video art, we work with NFTs. So there really isn't so much of a separation, because to me, NFTs are really just a medium and a technology. And with the work that I do at Mama Magnet, I'm sort of, I play the role of curator and founder, so I'm talking to clients or like potential platforms that want to work with artists and they want us to introduce them to artists. So I sort of find myself in this position where I'm speaking directly to the artist, and I'm able to pick up on like, oh hey, like this is what you need, or like this is what would make the ecosystem better for you. And then on the other hand, I'm talking with new platforms that want to come up or clients that want to do things in the space. So it's a privilege to be able to explain the artist's position to the client to help them improve their product, or to help them introduce certain aspects of the product. So like one example that I'm currently interested in the NFT space is this idea of licensing. So we're in 2023. Why is it so difficult for digital art to just be picked up by a client, like say Singpost sees an artwork that they like and they want to create stamps? It should be very easy, like systematically, for them to just click a few buttons, and then the money goes directly to the artist and the royalties are shared amongst the creators. So I'm interested in things to do with streamlining digital art, or I work with a few music collectives, and in the past, showing art at parties is really tough because you want a dark space, but the artwork requires light. But now with things like NFTs, it's really simple. Like for example, if you want to showcase visuals, whether it's a house party or whether it's a club, it should be really simple to like go into platforms and streamline these processes to be like, oh, I want to show this work for my one event, which is 3 hours, and then the money goes directly to the artist. Mm-hmm. So like I'm in the position of talking to platforms and things like this.
Right, so your interactions with the communities are less about, building up the social collectivism, but actually starting to answer some of the more critical questions when it comes to the infrastructure layer of it all, and making sure that, when we bridge digital artwork or NFT artwork, which are effectively one and the same, into the real life space, as it were, when it comes to exhibiting, displaying, and, like as you said, licensing work, making that as seamless as possible. And I think that's going to be where, these community conversations become a lot more critical, because there are a lot of unanswered questions in this space. There's a lot of excitement and it's a lot of a positive atmosphere, but until we answer the fundamentals, we're all dealing with a lot of big ideas before the actual execution layer for all of this. But another important road that we need to go down is we've spoken a lot about kind of the community, the hype, the positive atmosphere, the encouragement, but there is also a dark side to all of this. There is a morbid side to the internet where people are perhaps less than kind. How do we make sure that we keep these NFT art communities thriving and healthy and a positive atmosphere for people to still feel empowered to come forward and present their work and work with one another? Clara?
I think for us with NFT Asia, we took cues from gaming communities and artists that were already digital artists that were running their own discords, maybe with like tens and thousands of followers or fans interacting with them. How do you keep, for example, a huge gaming discord safe? You know, how do you make sure that you have people of different age ranges? Like, how do you make sure the conversation is appropriate or conducive, and people can actually have fun within that environment? Because when we started, like myself, I had only been a passive user or observer of some discords, but I never really got into it. But when we first started NFT Asia in March 2021, it grew really quickly because we recognized this was a gap that like artists wanted to have, and we wanted to provide that space or help to build that space. So it's this rapid learning of, all right, this is how Discord works, this is how bots work, this is how you could maybe moderate. And then, you know, through this iterative process, I think in the first couple months, we started instilling more and more ground rules or more and more guidelines for how conversations could take place. And also onboarding more community moderators, you know, people that were already very familiar with Discord or how these communities tend to play out, to help to support and basically facilitate. It's tough, right? Because it's a 24/7 space. There's no time when you say, okay, we're shutting down the server, the conversation ends here. It just keeps going. And you want it to keep going, but you have to make sure that it's, you know, it's a safe space at all times. And I think that's the part that's actually really taxing. It's huge emotional labor. And I think a lot of PFP communities, for example, have then had the capital and the resources to compensate community moderators at a better rate, because they recognize actually these are the people keeping your community together. These are the people making sure that there's interest, that the project is still relevant. So I think we start taking cues from that too, just watching how other people are running community around us, even if it's not art focused, but how do they just keep that space conducive? I just want to wrap up with something that another community moderator said to me recently that really just kind of, really stuck with me. Her name is Joanna. She used to be a digital moderator for Trust, which is a research network based in Berlin, and she left her job to join Art Gobblers, which is a newer PFP project supported by Paradigm and with Justin Roiland as the main artist. She had been growing this community, and we were having this conversation about how difficult it is to sustain community, especially through the ups and downs of the crypto space. And she said to me that it's important to look at community as though it's a living organism, right? It has different kinks, you know, that you have to respond to. Sometimes it wants to grow in this area, and as the moderator, you have to be open enough to follow that. It shouldn't be a directive or a dictative like, oh, this is what the community should do. This is what the community wants. But it has to be listening to, you know, just through conversations. What are people saying? What are people interested in? What are people asking questions about? And how can we then address those questions? So I guess, it's actually a very laborious process that involves a lot of different people. We have a core team of over 10 artists or curators, but we also have a lot of other very committed members who are very active, who show up all the time. And even though they're not necessarily part of the core team, but they've been the ones keeping the community alive as well. And so, it takes a whole village.
To add a kind of visual element to it, I always see it as a bowling alley, and the bumpers on the alley itself acting as the rough guide, the kind of the thing that keeps the ball in play and doesn't kind of let things go too far astray at the same time. It's not there to fix or change the game in any way. It's just to allow some layer of protection against how hectic that the online space can actually end up becoming. I think we are counting down on time, but I would like to offer the audience the opportunity to ask any questions that they might have for this conversation. And if you'd like to simply raise your hand, we can offer you a microphone and we can take it from there. Don't be shy. No? Well, we can keep the conversation flowing a little longer because one question I do want to ask each of you, which is it's more of a wrap-up question, really. It's what is, one lesson that you've taken from the NFT art space that you think the traditional art space can really take hold of or take value from? Tulika, why don't we start with you?
I think with the NFT art space, a big thing is working across multiple time zones and having these like crazy hours where you're creating and waking up and creating again. And I think it's just become a lot more pronounced or highlighted with the NFT art space because this still happens in when you're making paintings or when you're working towards something. So I think it's great that the NFT space is starting to address things like mental health and needing to like take time off and have breaks a little bit more. And it was like on the tangent that Clara was mentioning earlier, like it's great that we're talking about these things and that we're also like talking about them in physical spaces because it's important.
Bjorn?
Yeah, same with what Tulika said. That don't follow the face of the space because it goes very uncontrollably, and you lose track of your mental health. Another thing is always with making art for me. I see to it that I believe that the stronger the grander the intention, the stronger the foundation is. So if the intention is goes beyond just the financial gains, you'll stick around even during whatever market comes. So.
And Clara?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot of things from just being in like the digital art NFT space and how that fit into my own practice as a curator that also works in the trad art space. And it's interesting because I feel like we all exist across both of those spaces. I think maybe one of the main things was to take yourself less seriously. As like a young arts worker, I think when I first started working, I had this particular notion of like, what is curation and who gets to be your curator? And how like, oh, you're never good enough, or you have to get XYZ as like the pathway to then go into a certain position. But because this space is so nascent and there's not yet really rules, which is both good and bad, but there's also been a lot of openness to just learn and explore and then see what those previous systems, that we have already can then work for what we're building now. So yeah, I think just seeing that there's a lot of open-mindedness, there's a lot of learning, a lot of embracing that, yeah, actually none of us really know, how this is going to play out or what we're really doing because it's so new. But we can learn together and we can figure it out if the intention is right. So I think that has really helped me in my wider practice, just taking myself less seriously, just accepting that if I'm really curious and asking for help, there's, openness to share. So
I'd like to offer the audience one last opportunity to ask a question before I wrap up this conversation. Yes, we do have one in the front.
Well, thank you for first of all sharing everything is great panel. I have a question related to how do you moderate and keep the community very engaged, especially right now during the bear whatever market now. You cannot really sell in the secondary, and it doesn't really work that much. I believe the art itself is worth peak worth value, right? So how, and other than like people saying good morning, good evening, whatever, this random BS, how do you keep this Discord or community engaged, and how do you continuously driving this engagement in a meaningful way rather than just talking random topic?
Would anyone like to take the question? For the sake of the audience, the question was, how do you keep these communities active and alive, especially during slow periods like the bear market that we're currently in a way that keeps the artists well supported and the market staying alive and very much healthy and active?
Just being active and engaging with your audience. I think for me, I just keep on making art because with even if it's not with Web3 or even if I don't have anything for exhibition, I'd still be making art. And for me, just sharing it out there so people can see it, I think it's a good form of engagement because I think that's what the universe put me out here to do, just to make art and share it to the world. So I think doesn't matter if it sells or not. So that's one way of engaging, and being open to people when they're trying to communicate is also one thing. Um, and also when younger artists are have questions, I'm also open to suggesting, and I'm also open to asking them about things, especially in Web3, because I'm not really adept to the technicalities of the technology.
So in principle, just continue to create and continue to have the critical conversations that are going to help educate all users of all levels, whether they're creators, collectors, and so on, to understand the fundamentals of this entire exercise, regardless of what the market conditions look like. Would Tulika, Clara, yes, please?
Yeah, maybe I can just add on. It's hard to deny that during the bear market or in this moment of just overall slowdown, that there's less engagement, there's less activity. Within NFT Asia, we've definitely seen, let's say during like NFT summer, like 2021 June, everyone was selling out. And so the kind of activity and energy that we had was incredible. And now we're in a very different kind of space, but a lot more of the conversations now focus on longer term building. So there's this recognition that like markets are cyclical, and this is a space that is very tied to the market. So this is a slower moment, but building hasn't necessarily stopped. In fact, like for NFT Asia, we thought after what happened in June, okay, we're just gonna restructure, we're gonna turn inwards, we're gonna, focus on longer term building and slow down. And that moment never really came because we started getting more inquiries for like partnerships to show works in like Tokyo. We did a Sotheby's collab in November. We showed in Hong Kong. We did something with Taipei for the blockchain week. And we already have things lined up for like the first quarter of this year. So that was completely surprising for us because we start seeing people leaving. And then now there's actually more opportunities in the space because institutional interest sort of is only just starting to come in and really thinking about how to work with artists. So I would say, we try our best as moderators to signal that actually these opportunities are coming up. We're running open calls very actively. If you're still interested in the space, there's actually still a lot of new pathways to explore. But also, if you want to be in the space long term, you have to accept the volatilities or the cyclical nature that is tied to the market. But who knows when the next, run may come, and if you want to be there when it happens. Yeah, but also I guess coming back for artists, it's your longer term practice. So, yeah.
And to add to that, in the Philippines, we're also slowly starting to incorporate putting NFT shows in the art fairs. We're trying to educate a lot of the audience of artists of art in general about the technology, about the NFTs, and I think it's a learning process, and like Clara said, we don't really know what we're doing, but we're gonna learn together. So whatever the market dictates, it wouldn't matter until what matters is that it's happening and we're doing it because this is our time, this is our moment, and the technology is available. So might as well.
And Tulika, would you like to add anything?
I think moments like I think they covered everything, but I think like moments like crypto winter, they help to weed out those who were there just to make money, and I think you support communities by telling them like, okay, now's the time to build, and if you're looking at this platform primarily to make money, then maybe you're in the wrong place.
I think there is a clear separation between the activity that's happening within these blockchain communities and how they are expanding outward into the traditional art world, whether it's Sotheby's, Christie's, major art houses who are starting to interact with this technology a lot more readily versus the commercial opportunity we're seeing in terms of high sale volumes and big editions that are being dropped, and a lot of the market hype. It is an inherent part of it, and the market conditions, as Clara rightfully said, do impact the levels of activity that are taking place. But as Bjorn added, artists are still creating, communities are still being built, and given it's a cyclical thing, it's going to come back around, and it's more about faith in why this technology is so fundamental to digital artists in their future, rather than seeing what the commercial opportunity is going to be a key lesson for everybody in this space, I think. Do we have time for one more question? Excellent. Yes, in the back.
How does the NFT art space respond to the harsher reputation due to the great number of NFT and crypto scams?
So how do NFT artists respond to the harsh reputation that's built out of a lot of the scams that have revealed themselves as of late?
By scams, could you clarify,
Well, there are some crypto pump and dump schemes. There are lots of NFT artists who kind of, make a lot of NFTs, and they sometimes people who have those NFTs, they can get links to somewhere else, and they click on that link and they get all of the art stolen. There's no way to recover it, stuff like that. There's Evergreen. I know that for a fact that there is a pretty debatable reputation on NFTs as of late, especially due to the lowering market. So I just wondered how some artists might respond to that kind of situation.
I haven't been pumped.
That's a good answer, actually. Not everyone falls victim to, the hype machine necessarily. Some artists, I think, can safely be buffered from a lot of that. And I think in a space as unregulated as crypto, as it were, there are a lot of foul players that are going to taint the space. But I think when it comes down to the technological fundamentals of what make NFTs so impactful for artists, that still remains regardless of the scams that are created around it. And personally, I think that's what retains the value of NFTs for artists. It's because it does offer more financial opportunity. It offers them means of engagement with their community, closer relationships with their buyers and their collectors. And that's not something that should be so readily diluted by the fact that there are foul players within the same sandbox. And I think the same would be true of any arena that we play in. It's just that because of the amount of money or the amount of capital that flows within these spaces, we tend to focus and fixate on it a lot more because there's a lot less protection there until we get some kind of regulatory framework for people to interact between. That's my personal take. I don't know.
I think the Web2 space also has a lot of scams. Every week I get a fake call from Ministry of Health. So, as do all of you. So I think same like Web3 also has these scams. So I think we just need to stay vigilant, as the government would tell us, and just be careful, with the transactions that we make, and just pay attention a little bit more to what we're doing online.
I'll add, because a lot of people are in it for easy money, and there's not really such thing as easy money. So, just do your own research. I think it's important.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Clara, any final words to add?
I guess it's actually a blockchain thing because the idea is to be your own custodian, right? And to hold your own keys. And so you have to take on the responsibility of taking care of your own assets. it's not really a fault of the artist, nor is it a fault of just the NFT artists specifically, but a part and parcel of, I think, just being in the space. I think the hope is that as the space matures, that there will be more pathways or infrastructures that help individual users or the mass public to come into the space and navigate it with more awareness or just, literacy to understand, oh, this is probably a phishing link, or this is a bad practice and I shouldn't fall, victim to that, things like that. But yeah, I think doing your own research, but also recognizing that like there are bad actors across all ecosystems, as maybe especially rampant and sensationalized right now in the Web3 space. But in order to participate in a space that focuses on being, holding your own wallets, holding your own keys, that's a responsibility you also have to bear and navigate.
So long story short, keep your wits about you and don't click every single link or buy into every single project you come across because everyone's hyping it to a level where it's easy to forget why you're actually interested in the piece to begin with. So Clara, Bjorn, Tulika, thank you so much for your perspectives. It's an amazing conversation, and thanks to all of you as well.